Because the first thing you do, obviously, when you meet up with someone that you save the world with, no, actually, the universe with, for the first time in months, of course, the first thing you do is bicker like children. Hello, I'm Phil, welcome to my channel where I talk about all the pop culture that I love and enjoy and consume, including things like Doctor Who, Star Trek, and Red Dwarf, and the MCU, which is what we're talking about today. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Episode 2. Spoiler review. Go away and come back if you've not watched it. It's called The Star-Spangled Man because its focus, especially at the beginning, is on the new Captain America. We got a new Captain America at the end of last week's episode, and it's safe to say the internet had some opinions on him. We didn't really see much of him. He just got announced, he came out, and he gave a very cheesy, smug smile, and we were not here for it. We did not like that smug smile. Smug git, I think, was the general consensus on Twitter. We didn't like him, which is why I really liked how they started this episode, because they started it with a scene dedicated to him. Sort of a preview of him waiting to go out. I'm not sure if it was meant to be just before that announcement, like we'd gone back a bit, or if it was just before the next scene. Doesn't matter. What this scene did was it really humanized John Walker, the new Captain America, because, yeah, we didn't like him at the end of the line. We pretty much universally agreed we did not like him. But by the end of this episode, certainly by the end of the first half of this episode, I kind of do like him. It would have been so easy just to make him a smug git that we didn't like, that was arrogant constantly, that, berated our heroes that we are following, our protagonists, but they didn't do that. They gave him sort of some, characteristics that we could admire. He is clearly someone who wants to do the best they can for their country. He's someone who wants to try and do his best and live up to the mantle, and we get dialogue to that effect in that locker room scene at the beginning when he's talking to his mate. I think it's so much better that we get that sort of nuance and we don't just get a kind of, oh, here's the guy we're meant to hate. Here's the guy that is doing his best, and you can also understand why our protagonists are a little bit iffy towards him, because he's taken them, there was a little bit of betrayal there by the government against Sam, and that resentment carries over, and you can understand why he feels that resentment towards this guy. But it's not really this guy's fault. He seems to be doing his best. Now, who knows what that's going to go further down the line, and there are some hints a little bit later on in the episode. There is some, he's not a perfect character, this John Walker. He does get a little bit smug and a little bit arrogant in a couple of lines later on. But having that where he has that, both of the elements, he seems to be a nice guy that wants to do the right thing, but also, occasionally it goes to his head. That's nuance, and it's much better to have that nuance than just have him be one note, we don't like him. The football stadium stuff really mirrored the sort of early bits of Captain America's first movie, where, in fact, it had the same song, just a new sort of modern arrangement of it, of the Star-Spangled Man with a Plan song. You had the twirly dancers, big show. When it was a PR exercise, before Steve was allowed to go out and fight in World War II, and he was basically just a PR exercise, that's what this is here, except he's being allowed to fight at the same time, so he's kind of doing both jobs at once, this Steve Walker. Steve Walker? Whatever his name is. I've forgotten his name already. No, it's not Steve, is it? John Walker. He's doing both jobs at once. He is clearly a PR tool for the US government, but he also has that ability and is sent into the field as well. Bucky is pissed. He's so pissed off at this that he tracks down Falcon, tracks down Sam and has a massive go at him about why he gave up the shield. And I can understand it from both aspects here. That these two characters are both, aren't happy with the current situation, but they're dealing with it in very different ways. And it's just one of the many ways we see how they are different characters and how they clash up against each other. They're both not happy about this, but they're dealing with it in very different ways. Bucky's much more head-on, wants to, deal with the situation, go steal the shield back, and, he say that Steve's wishes should be honoured. Sam is much more, he's still not happy with the current situation, and obviously he feels betrayed by the government, and, that he gave them the shield back and then they just give it to someone else rather than putting it in the museum where they said they were going to. But he's kind of resigned to it. He's not happy about it, but it is what it is. I like the relationship we get between Bucky and Sam in this episode. It's very tense, kind of slightly adversarial relationship, because they sort of mock each other, tease each other. Sam is constantly making jokes about Bucky. There's some nice moments, they have these conflicts. Like I love the line about the wizard and the sorcerers. One of them says wizards aren't real. Sorcerers are just wizards without hats. And there's lots of nice little moments like that. When Bucky, one of my favourites was when Bucky jumps out of the plane with that parachute, and it doesn't go massively well for him, and he ends up quite hurt on his back. Not disastrously hurt, but embarrassingly hurt, possibly. And Sam mentions that he got it all on camera. So you get these nice scenes between them. There's a scene a bit later on where they're in basically couples therapy together because of, a situation I'll get to later. But that scene is great. Just the comedy in that scene was very underplayed, but it was amusing. So going back to Captain America, like I say, I think he's being portrayed here as a very understandable and relatable character. But Bucky and Sam clearly and understandably have resentment towards him, and we see this when they actually meet up in the big fight scene, the sort of action piece of the episode, on the top of the lorries. Afterwards, when they are in the van afterwards and they have to interact with him, there's hostility there. And actually, I was more on Captain America's side here. I was more on John Walker's side, because they were being a little bit out of line, I think, but understandably so, if that makes sense. Talking of the action scene, it was on the whole a good action scene. I think we're getting one action scene per episode. I think that's probably what's gonna happen, and the rest surrounding it is going to be very much character stuff. Last week it was the opening scene. Here is in the middle of the episode, but I think probably the budget is going to allow for maybe one action scene per episode, and then the rest is going to be character focused, as it should be. That's what the television format brings to stuff like the MCU, the ability to spend the time with the characters and get to know them and really do the work on developing those characters that you don't have time for in a movie. So the action scene was pretty good. I thought exciting, nothing spectacular. The only downside, I thought some of the point of view shots when Falcon was flying looked a bit ropey, but other than that, it was very enjoyable. And the villains in this bit are the Flag Smashers. They are a group that wants a world without borders. So, we're led to believe that this is kind of what happened during the 5 years of the blip, that borders kind of were a lot looser and the world kind of came together. And they want to go back to that. And they are not an unsympathetic antagonist for our heroes, because they're not out and out evil. They're not, again, we're getting nuance here. Their goals aren't evil goals. It's a perfectly valid idea to have this. So having a borderless world, or a world without countries, that's an aspirational aim, potentially even. But obviously they are using some tactics which will get people hurt, and that's not good. So there's nuance there. They're not necessarily bad people, but their aims aren't bad, but they are the antagonist to our heroes. So again, I like the fact that this show isn't going all out and going, right, these people bad, these people good. There is nuance there. And I think possibly we're led to believe, there's hints at least, that there might be a bigger villain in the form of the Power Broker, who appears to be after the Flag Smashers. And they, at one point, they're running away and trying to get away on a plane. One of them sacrifices themselves to hold off the Power brokers, people. Who is the power broker? I only know from the comics that it's a character that deals out superpowers, basically. So whether or not that takes the form of one person in the MCU or a organization in the MCU, we are yet to find out, but I suspect they are going to be the bigger bad in this series. We get a scene where Falcon and Bucky go and visit Isaiah, who is what we find out in this scene is that there were super soldiers between when Captain America went in the ice and when he came out of the ice. And one of those is Isaiah, who was sent on missions. And nobody has heard of them. You know, as Falcon points out, as Sam points out after their meeting, after they've met him, you know, why did nobody tell me? How does nobody know that decades ago there was a black super soldier going around? And obviously it was very covert and under the radar. And they put him in prison afterwards. But this whole scene, while interesting information, was very much exposition for the sake of exposition. Story-wise, I didn't quite get why they went there. Everything that we learnt there, Bucky could have just told Sam. So, although it's nice for us to see the person and see their emotional reaction to Bucky, because the reason Bucky knows about this person is because this person was sent in to fight Bucky back when Bucky was the Winter Soldier. But it just didn't make much logical sense why they needed to go there. They didn't get anything from it. They didn't learn anything from it that Bucky couldn't have told Sam. So I didn't quite get why they went there. However, there were some good scenes sort of surrounding it. There was a nice bit where they were walking to the house and some kids sort of recognize them and refer to Sam as Black Falcon, which he corrects him, and it's just Falcon, which is a nice, I think, meta trope, sort of meta comment on the fact that around that era of comics, you know, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, if there was a black superhero, 9 times out of 10, their superhero name would have the word black in it. Black Lightning, Black Panther, there are more, but you get the gist. It just seemed to be a trope, and it was quite nice that this trope, they referenced this trope. Falcon actually was one of the few superheroes of that sort of time the few black superheroes of that time that didn't have black in their name at all. So, good, you know, I like the fact that they referenced that. So that was before they went in, and then after they came out, the police, they're having an argument in the street, and the police stop them. Some sirens, go, the police pull up, and they sort of, it's a very short scene, but it's a nice little bit of commentary on sort of race relations in the US between police and people and sort of ethnic communities in the US, because the police instantly say to Bucky, is this man bothering you? They instantly say to the white man, is this black man bothering you, basically. And it just, in that one line, just sort of epitomizes institutional bias that might be there, that is there. So I like the fact that, you know, that they dealt with that. They didn't dwell on it massively. And as soon as they find out that he's the Falcon, it's like their attitude immediately changes. And he's, oh, yeah, buddy with him. And actually they end up arresting Bucky because it turns out that there's a warrant out for Bucky's arrest because he has missed his court-mandated therapy session, which then later on leads to the joint therapy session, which I've already mentioned. But yeah, this show is going to touch on issues like that, and I think it's right that it does. You know, we had a little bit about it in sort of like the social situation of Falcon's family, Sam's family last week. There's going to be... I think it's right that it does tackle these things where appropriate. Now, I did say that the new Captain America is mostly quite sympathetic in this, and he is, but there are moments where the arrogance and the smugness does creep in, and we do see a little bit of it. Like when he's, arranging for Bucky to be released and not have to do the court-mandated therapy anymore. He, when the therapist asks under whose authority, he just sort of points to himself as my authority. And, a little bit smug. And there's earlier on, when they're in the truck, I think it was, or at some point he refers to himself as, I am the government. Oh, it was when, yeah, that's it. It's when Falcon, when Sam asks about, mentions that they hacked his suit, and he points out it's actually government property and I am the government. So there's an element of smugness to him, which again, I think is good, because it's nuance. I keep on using that word, but it's nuance. He's not like, oh, we need to be completely against this guy, but he's also not perfect. And nobody is. Finally, we get mentioned that they are going to have to go visit someone who has knowledge of the Winter Soldier's time with Hydra. And then we cut to a prison where we see Zemo in his shell, the antagonist from Civil War. We knew he was going to be in this. He's going to get his purple mask at some point. Is he manipulating things from inside prison? Or is he, at the moment, nothing to do with this and they're going to bring him in? Questions we still have. But I'm interested to see what they're going to do with him. So overall, I thought this was a good episode. I actually think I enjoyed the fact that they now met up. I do think the first episode was absolutely fine having them separate and really building up where they are with their lives. But it's good that they met up this quickly in episode 2, I think, and we're getting to see them work and gel or not gel together. So I'd probably say I enjoyed this episode slightly more than last week. What did you think? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? What was your favourite part of the episode? What did you not like so much? Let me know all of that in the comments below, and I'll be back next week for another review. In the meantime, I will see you then. Goodbye.